Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey, Herman and Corn. So today I'd like to chat about a topic that receives very scant attention, even from the internet. And that's the topic of bloating in men and male-friendly bloating clothing. So Herman and Corn, we've talked about post-gallbladder complications in previous episodes. And I mentioned that since having mine removed like 7 years ago, I've really dealt with a lot of issues, but probably the most bothersome one is bloating. I absolutely despise bloating, but as I speak to you, my stomach is kind of just doing its own thing. And it's a really tricky one to treat. There aren't, especially when it's maybe related to changes in your bile acid metabolism. It's unfortunately can be very protracted and sometimes defies your best attempts to do everything right by the book, eat the bloat-friendly food, and your stomach just does it. The thing I've realized about bloating is that it's a true battle between mind and body, by which I mean that it might start with the body physiologically, but then you start to feel really, really gross and horrible, and it just kind of cascades. You just feel like sitting on a couch and until your stomach kind of deflates. And we often just don't have that luxury in today's busy lives. So I know for women who deal with this, is so commonly thought of as just a women's problem. We have bloating friendly clothing, and I belatedly picked up my first one a few years ago, or maybe it wasn't even last summer, and I finally got around to wearing it yesterday. I'm looking at these business appropriate style pants that just have an elastic waist, and it really made a great difference to my day, because when you're that feedback loop I'm talking about, that you feel icky, maybe that makes the bloating worse because you're now distressed, and that brain body circuit is just kind of self perpetuating. So Herman and Corn, I'd love to get your tips. I'm certainly, as you know from seeing me around the house, nothing like a fashionista. Hannah is a much more fashion forward of the two, as she likes to describe herself. But I do want to be comfortable, whether I'm in a business context or just around the house. What do you say for those of us guys listening to this who might struggle with this due to a medical surgery or some other reason, and we're looking for stuff to have in our wardrobe that will make us feel comfortable, whatever life throws our way? Herman and Corn, let's talk about bloating friendly clothing for men in today's episode of My Weird Prompts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. I am Corn, and as always, I am joined by my brother and housemate, the man who knows more about the internal workings of a toaster and the human gallbladder than anyone I have ever met.
Herman Poppleberry, at your service. It is good to be back in the studio, Corn, though calling it a studio might be a bit generous for our basement setup here in Jerusalem. It is February 12th, 2026, and the damp chill of the Judean hills is definitely seeping through these stone walls today.
It has character, Herman. That is what matters. The stone keeps the sound dampening natural. Anyway, we have a really interesting and frankly quite personal prompt today from our housemate Daniel. He was talking to us over coffee this morning about something that does not get nearly enough airtime in men's health or fashion circles, and that is chronic bloating. It is one of those invisible struggles that can absolutely wreck your confidence.
Specifically, Daniel was mentioning his experience after having his gallbladder removed about 7 years ago. He is dealing with some post-surgical complications that lead to significant, often unpredictable bloating. It is that frustrating battle between the mind and the body, where you want to go about your day, lead your meetings, and look professional, but your midsection has other plans. It creates this physical and mental friction that is hard to describe if you haven't lived it.
Exactly. He mentioned how finding business-appropriate pants with an elastic waist was a total game-changer for him. It sounds like a small thing, but for him, it was the difference between being able to focus on his work and spending the whole day in physical agony and self-consciousness. So today we are going to dive deep into the physiology of bloating, especially post-surgery, and then get into the nitty-gritty of building a wardrobe that is both stylish and bloat-friendly. Because let's be honest, the sweatpants-only lifestyle is not always an option when you have a career and a social life.
It certainly isn't. And I think it is important to start with the medical side because understanding the why helps alleviate some of that mental distress Daniel mentioned. When you know it is a physiological process and not just a personal failing or a lack of discipline, it changes the internal narrative. You stop asking, what is wrong with me? And start asking, how do I manage this system?
Right, so Herman, let's talk about that. Daniel specifically mentioned the gallbladder. For those who might not know, and I'll admit, my knowledge is a bit fuzzy here, what is actually happening when that organ is gone? Why does its absence cause the stomach to expand like a balloon?
So, the gallbladder is essentially a storage tank and a concentrator for bile, which is produced by the liver. Bile is the detergent of the digestive system. Its primary job is to emulsify fats so they can be absorbed. In a standard body, when you eat a meal, especially one with fats, the gallbladder receives a hormonal signal to squeeze. It releases a concentrated dose of bile into the small intestine right when it is needed. When you remove it, usually due to cholecystitis or gallstones, you lose that precision-timed storage capacity. The liver doesn't stop making bile, but it no longer has a place to park it. So, the liver just drips bile into the small intestine continuously, 24 hours a day.
So instead of a targeted release during a meal, it is just a constant slow leak?
Precisely. And that can lead to a few different issues. One is called bile acid malabsorption. If there is too much bile in the intestines at the wrong time, or if the bile isn't being reabsorbed correctly in the lower part of the small intestine, it acts as a laxative and an irritant. This can speed up digestion significantly, leading to urgency, but it also causes significant gas and bloating. Then there is the shift in the gut microbiome. Surgery itself, combined with the change in bile flow, can alter the balance of bacteria in your gut. If certain bacteria start fermenting food too quickly because the bile isn't there to regulate things, you get that distension. The gas produced by these bacteria literally inflates the intestines.
And Daniel mentioned it can be very protracted. It is not just a 1-hour thing after lunch where you feel a bit full. For him, it can last all day, and it can be physically painful.
It can. There is a specific term for what he is likely experiencing, Post-Cholecystectomy Syndrome, or PCS. It is estimated to affect anywhere from 10 to 15% of patients, though some studies suggest it could be as high as 30%. It involves bloating, indigestion, and even upper abdominal pain. The tricky part is that it can be triggered by things you would not expect. It is not always just fatty foods. Sometimes it is the timing of meals, sometimes it is the lack of fiber, or even stress. When the body is under stress, the sphincter of Oddi, which is the little muscle valve that controls the flow of bile into the intestine, can malfunction or spasm.
Which brings us to the mind-body battle Daniel talked about. When you feel physically distended, you feel sluggish. You feel, as he put it, gross. And that creates a feedback loop. You feel stressed about how you look or how your clothes are pinching, which increases cortisol. High cortisol can further slow down gastric emptying and alter gut motility, which causes, you guessed it, more bloating.
It is a vicious cycle, and I think the fashion element is actually a huge part of the mind side of that battle. If you are wearing a rigid, high-quality denim or a structured suit pant with a fixed, non-yielding waistband, every inch of bloat feels like a physical assault. It is a constant, tactile reminder that your body is failing you in that moment. You can't forget about it because your pants are literally digging into your internal organs.
I have noticed a massive shift in the industry lately, though. We are in 2026 now, and the athleisure trend of the early 20s has evolved into something much more sophisticated. We are seeing a lot more technical fabrics making their way into formal wear. Herman, you've been reading up on the rise of the commuter or performance suit for your own lab work, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is where the nerdy side of textile engineering meets everyday comfort. We are moving away from the idea that business appropriate has to mean unyielding. The gold standard right now is the inclusion of elastane or spandex, but blended in a way that doesn't look like gym clothes. We are talking about high-twist wools or synthetic blends that have incredible recovery.
Right, because no one wants to look like they're wearing yoga pants to a board meeting. There is a stigma there, especially for men.
Exactly. The trick is in the weave. You want a four-way stretch fabric. Most traditional jeans or stretch chinos have a two-way stretch, meaning they stretch horizontally. Four-way stretch moves with you in every direction, diagonally, vertically, and horizontally. There are brands now. Think of the evolution of companies like Lululemon with their ABC trousers, or Ministry of Supply making trousers that look identical to high-end wool slacks, but have up to 10 or 12% stretch. And the key feature Daniel mentioned, the hidden elastic waist.
I remember seeing those when we were shopping last month. Sometimes they call them active waists, or comfort waists. How do they actually hide the elastic? Because usually, an elastic waist looks like a pair of pajamas.
The engineering is clever. They often use a tunnel waistband. The elastic is tucked inside the waistband construction, sometimes only on the sides or the back. This allows the circumference to expand by 1 or even 2 inches without the outside of the pant looking gathered or bunched up. To the casual observer, it looks like a standard flat front trouser. But to the wearer, it provides a dynamic fit that expands as the day goes on.
That is huge for someone like Daniel. If he starts the day at a 34-inch waist and ends it at a 36-inch waist due to PCS, he doesn't have to change his clothes. The clothes change with him.
Yes, and some brands are even doing drawstring trousers that are tailored like dress pants. They have a zipper fly and belt loops, but also an internal drawstring. If you wear them with a blazer or a nice sweater, the drawstring is completely hidden, but you have the total freedom to adjust the tension as the day goes on. It is about removing the physical constraint. If the pants aren't digging into your abdomen, the sensory input of the bloating is drastically reduced. Your brain isn't receiving pain signals from your waistband, so you can actually focus on your presentation or your dinner conversation.
That is a great point. It is about sensory management. If you are already feeling full and uncomfortable internally, the last thing you want is a heavy leather belt and a metal buckle pressing into your stomach. Speaking of belts, what are the alternatives there? Because a traditional leather belt is pretty unforgiving.
Braided belts are a fantastic, often overlooked option. Since there are no preset holes, you can adjust them to the exact millimeter of comfort. There are also stretch belts, made of a woven elastic material that looks like a standard belt from a distance, but has several inches of give. In 2026, we are even seeing belts with micro adjustment tracks similar to a zip tie that allow for quarter-inch adjustments on the fly.
I also think we should talk about silhouettes. For a long time, the slim fit or skinny fit was king. But that is the worst nightmare for someone dealing with chronic bloating. It highlights every curve and every bit of distension.
You are right. We are seeing a massive return to relaxed and straight fits in the current fashion cycle. In the high fashion world, this is often called the wide leg trend. But for a professional context, you can just look for athletic taper or a classic fit. These styles provide more room in the seat and the thigh, which naturally accommodates a fluctuating waistline better than a skinny fit. If the pants are slightly roomier overall, the transition from a flat stomach to a bloated one is much less visually apparent.
What about shirts? Because if the bloating is high up in the abdomen, which it often is with gallbladder issues, even a button-down can feel restrictive. Or, worse, you get that gape between the buttons where the fabric is pulling.
That is the worst. It makes you feel incredibly self-conscious. My suggestion for men in this position is to look for knit button-downs. Traditional dress shirts are woven, which has very little give. Knit shirts, like a polo but with a full button front and a structured collar, have natural four-way stretch. They move with you. Also, the shacket or overshirt is your best friend.
The shacket. Explain that for the listeners who might not be up on their fashion terminology.
It is a hybrid between a shirt and a jacket, usually made of a slightly heavier material like a heavy flannel, corduroy, or a technical wool blend. You wear it unbuttoned or partially buttoned over a high-quality t-shirt or a thin merino sweater. It provides a structured vertical line that masks any abdominal distension while keeping you looking put together. It is the ultimate bloat-friendly layer because it doesn't cling to the midsection at all.
I like that. It provides a curtain of sorts, but it looks intentional. It is a style choice, not a camouflage choice. There is a psychological difference there. You don't feel like you are hiding. You feel like you are dressing well.
Exactly. And let's talk about fabrics for a second because heat management is part of this. When the gut is working overtime and fermenting, it can actually make you feel physically hot. Linen is incredible for this, especially in warmer climates like here in Jerusalem. It is naturally breathable and antimicrobial. Modern linen blends, especially those mixed with cotton or a tiny bit of tencel, don't wrinkle as badly as the old school stuff. They have a drape that is very forgiving.
One thing I have found helpful, and I wonder if you agree from a visual science perspective, is the darker colors rule. It sounds cliché, but navy, charcoal, and black really do minimize the visual impact of bloating.
It is a cliché for a reason, Corn. Dark colors absorb light and hide shadows. When your stomach is distended, it creates shadows underneath the peak of the bloat. Darker fabrics mask those shadows, making the transition from chest to waist look much smoother. If you wear a light-colored, thin fabric shirt, every contour of the bloating is highlighted by the way the light hits it.
So, if we were to build a bloat-friendly starter kit for Daniel or anyone else listening, what are the top 5 items? Let's get specific.
Okay, let's break it down. Number 1, the technical trouser. Look for something with at least 3 to 5% elastane and a hidden elastic waistband. Brands like Lululemon, Rhone, or even the high-end AirSense lines at Uniqlo are doing great work here. You want a navy or charcoal color.
Number 2.
The merino wool polo. Merino is a miracle fiber. It is breathable, it regulates temperature, and it has a natural stretch that a woven shirt lacks. It looks very old money and professional but feels like a soft t-shirt. It doesn't cling to the stomach the way a cheap cotton polo does.
I would add number 3. The unstructured blazer. Most traditional blazers have heavy canvas and padding inside that makes them stiff and boxy. An unstructured blazer is just the outer fabric. It drapes over the body rather than fighting against it. It adds a professional shoulder line while being completely forgiving around the middle. You can wear it over a t-shirt or a knit shirt and instantly look like you are ready for a board meeting.
Great call. Number 4 has to be the braided or elastic belt. Never use a rigid, thick leather belt on a day when you know you are going to be sitting in meetings and dealing with PCS. It is a recipe for a bad mood and physical pain.
And number 5?
I'm going with a long line t-shirt or undershirt. Not so long that it looks like a dress, but something with an extra inch or 2 of length. There is nothing that makes you feel more self-conscious than your shirt riding up because of bloating, exposing your midsection when you reach for something. Having that extra length ensures you stay tucked in and covered, which provides a lot of mental security.
That mental security is huge. It is about reclaiming your focus. If you aren't thinking about your waistband or your shirt gaping, you can actually focus on your work, your family, or your conversation. You are essentially lowering the background noise of your body.
Absolutely. And there are a few lifestyle tips that go along with the wardrobe. For example, posture. When we bloat, we tend to slouch or hunch over to hide it, but that actually compresses the digestive tract and can make the gas trapped in there feel much more painful. Standing tall and keeping the core engaged but not clenched can actually help the motility of the gut. It gives the organs more room to breathe, literally.
I have also heard that hydration is counterintuitive here. People think if they are bloated, they should stop drinking water so they don't add volume, but it is actually the opposite.
You are spot on. Dehydration causes the body to hold on to water retention, which can lead to even more distension. Drinking small sips of room temperature water throughout the day helps keep things moving through the colon. Avoid carbonated drinks at all costs on those days, obviously. No seltzer, no soda. You are just pumping more gas into an already pressurized system.
Oh, for sure. No seltzer when you already feel like a parade balloon. That is a mistake you only make once.
Another thing to consider is the 2-size rule for your wardrobe. I know some people find this discouraging, but having a few pairs of bloat pants that are 1 size larger than your lean size is a massive act of self-care. If you are trying to squeeze into your smallest, most restrictive pants on a day when your gallbladder issues are acting up, you are going to have a miserable day. You will feel fat, you will feel unhealthy, and you will be in pain.
It is about accepting the body you have in the moment. If you have transition clothes, you aren't failing. At your health, you are just being prepared for a known physiological reality.
Exactly. It is like having an umbrella for a rainy day. You don't get mad at yourself for needing the umbrella, you are just glad you have it. Having a bloat day outfit that you know looks good and feels comfortable takes the decision-making stress out of a morning when you are already feeling physically low.
I want to go back to the gallbladder thing for a second, because Daniel's situation is so specific. Are there certain things he should be looking at to complement the wardrobe changes? We talked about the why, but what about the how of management?
Well, I am not a medical doctor, and Daniel should definitely consult a specialist, but research into bile acid sequestrants can be very enlightening for post-cholecystectomy patients. These are medications that bind to the bile acids and help them pass through the system more smoothly. Also, digestive enzymes that specifically include ox bile can sometimes help replace what the gallbladder used to provide, helping to break down fats more efficiently so they don't sit in the small intestine and ferment.
It is fascinating how much the removal of one small organ can ripple through your entire lifestyle, from what you eat to what you wear to how you feel about yourself in a professional setting. It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
It really is. The human body is a finely tuned machine, and when you remove a component, the rest of the system has to compensate. Sometimes that compensation is loud, like bloating. The goal is to make that compensation as quiet as possible through diet, supplements, and, yes, clothing.
I think it is also worth mentioning that this isn't just a post-surgery issue. A lot of men deal with irritable bowel syndrome, SIBO, or general food sensitivities, and the advice remains the same. The shame around bloating in men is something we need to dismantle. We talk about it in women's health all the time. The bloat-friendly dress or the maternity-adjacent styles, but men are often expected to just tough it out or suck it in.
Suck it in is the worst advice you can give. It creates chronic tension in the pelvic floor and the diaphragm, which can actually worsen chronic digestive issues and lead to shallow breathing. Shallow breathing then triggers the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, which further shuts down digestion. It is a disaster. The best thing you can do is let it out in a way that feels comfortable and supported by your clothing.
That is a great mantra. Let it out, but keep it stylish.
Exactly. And I think the fashion industry is finally catching up to this reality. Even high-end designers are embracing the oversized or architectural aesthetic. We are seeing a lot of boxy silhouettes in 2026 that were popular in the 80s and 90s. Those are inherently bloat-friendly. The big suit energy is back, and it is a godsend for anyone with digestive issues.
It is funny how trends work. We went from the ultra-skinny indie sleaze look of the early 2000s to this much more roomy, comfortable style. It is a good time to have a fluctuating waistline. You can look trendy and be comfortable at the same time.
It really is. And for those who need to stay in a business formal environment where a boxy suit might be too much, don't sleep on the half-elastic waistband. This is a pant that has a flat, traditional front with a button and zip, but the back half of the waistband is elastic. When you wear a blazer or even just a sweater, the elastic is completely hidden, but you get all the benefits of a sweat pant.
That sounds like the ultimate secret weapon for a professional. It is like a stealth comfort system.
It truly is. I have a pair myself for those long days in the lab when I am sitting down at the microscope for 6 hours. Sitting down actually increases the intra-abdominal pressure, so having that given the back of the waistband is crucial for preventing that pinched feeling at the end of the day.
You know, we should probably touch on shoes too. It sounds unrelated, but I have noticed that if my feet are hurting, my whole body feels more tense, which seems to make my digestion worse.
That is actually a very deep insight, Corn. There is a concept in neurology called total load. It is the total amount of discomfort or sensory input our brains have to process. If your shoes are pinching, and your waist is tight, and your shirt is restrictive, and you are bloated, your brain goes into emergency mode. But if your shoes are supportive and your pants are comfortable, you can handle the internal discomfort of bloating much better because your total load is lower.
It is about reducing the noise, coming from the rest of your body so you can manage the one thing you can't control, the bloating.
Precisely. Look for hybrid dress shoes. There are many brands now. Cole Haan was a pioneer here, but many others have followed, that make a classic leather Oxford upper but with a high-performance sneaker sole. It changes how you carry yourself. It reduces the impact on your joints and keeps your nervous system calmer.
So, looking at the big picture, Daniel is dealing with a very real physical challenge. But by changing the interface between his body and the world, which is his clothing, he can significantly reduce the mental and physical burden of his condition.
That is the perfect way to put it. Clothing is an interface. If the interface is buggy, restrictive, or painful, the whole experience of being you for the day is going to be frustrating and exhausting. By choosing technical fabrics, relaxed silhouettes, and adjustable waists, you are essentially patching the interface to make it more user-friendly.
I hope this helps, Daniel, and I hope it helps anyone else out there who has been quietly struggling with this. It is okay to prioritize comfort. In fact, in 2026, prioritizing comfort is often the key to being more productive, more confident, and more present in your life.
Well said, brother. And hey, if you are listening and you have your own wardrobe hacks for medical issues, sensory processing, or just general comfort, we would love to hear them. We are all just trying to navigate these biological machines we live in. You can always get in touch through our website.
Speaking of which, if you're enjoying these deep dives into the weird prompts of our lives, please consider leaving us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It really does help the show grow and helps other people find these conversations. We have been doing this for a while now, and the community feedback is what keeps us going.
It really does. We see every one of them, and we appreciate the support. It is a bit lonely here in the basement sometimes, so knowing people are listening out there means a lot.
You can find all our past episodes and a way to contact us at myweirdprompts.com. We have covered everything from the science of sleep to the history of Jerusalem's architecture, so there is plenty to explore in the archives.
This has been episode 584 of My Weird Prompts. Thanks to Daniel for the great vulnerable topic. It is an important conversation to have.
And thanks to all of you for listening. We will see you next time.
Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox Turbo.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.